among a bunch of other professional services. Yeah, thank you guys for coming today. We have a loaded show with a lot of topics to go over, and we're just going to dive into it. So first, I'd like to give each panelist an opportunity to talk about what your company does and what sort of exciting opportunities and challenges you have going on at the moment.
Good morning, everybody. What a great time to get together. It's long overdue. I'm a partner in Jonah Construction, which is a division of the Jonna companies. Jonah Companies consists of two operating companies, Jonah Realty Ventures and Jonah Construction. Realty Ventures is a development arm, asset management. Construction is what we all do to make things happen in this town. Our projects have been across all sectors, office, medical, retail. Currently, we're working on a very interesting project in Ann Arbor called Viridian at County Park, which is a 13-acre residential development adjacent to a 139-acre park. And it's the first in the nation that is mixed income and net zero energy. So 100% electric, geothermal, solar, community parks and orchards. It's really exciting. We're on the construction management side of the infrastructure, but are definitely really involved in the project. In terms of the other kind of sector for construction that's been hot, it's the cannabis world. It's no shortage of cash in that business and eager participants to get their buildings up quickly. So that's kind of where we're in now. We are available for all kinds of projects. We have 3 historical buildings in Detroit that we have converted to lofts, and those have worked out really well for us. Thanks.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. It is very strange to actually be wearing clothes and sitting in front of a screen. It's kind of nice because you have a closet full of them. So it's great to be here. I'm the COO for Bedrock. Bedrock has about 18 million square feet in Detroit, in urban Detroit and urban downtown Cleveland. We have a variety of product types, from residential to office, retail, industrial, in both places. And so we're largely focused on not only operating our existing assets, which, you know, being downtowns, obviously those were hit in different ways than suburban areas were. So we've been largely focused there, but we never stopped. So we still have, in downtown Detroit, we've got Hudson's, which is going up. I think it's the first large tower that they've done in 50 years, and we now have steel on site, which is a really great thing. So we continue to push that forward. We have a project for our Book Tower, which is mixed use, resi, hotel, some retail, a little bit of office as well, and that should be opening at the end of December, the end of 2022, next December. So that's still been on track. We also just acquired something actually a block from here, the River Place, 300 River Place. So that's an office use with the garage. And so we've continued to keep moving forward. In Cleveland, we have Tower City, and so we continue to work on that as we try to improve that downtown area as well. And as many of you may already know, we put a huge degree of focus on keeping and bringing people downtown. And so we have spent a lot of time on activation. Sometimes I feel like we're as much in the entertainment business as we are in the real estate business. So that's a quick overview.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andy Gutman, president of the Farbman Group. We are a full-service commercial real estate company with a Midwest expertise and a global reach. We have about 25 million square feet under management currently. We spent really the last 12 to 18 months operating our properties, refinancing everything we could, selling a lot of properties with the high demand for sales. We're currently looking at actually acquiring again, which is exciting, and we've been looking throughout the pandemic, but it's been tough to buy, as everyone knows. And I think and when it comes to some of the challenges we're facing, it's not different than anyone else. It's a shortened workforce where you're scrambling to find people every day. We've actually been growing throughout the pandemic and adding new people. It's a broken supply chain. It's delays in construction. So those are some of the challenges I think we're all facing now, and I look forward to discussing this morning.
And thank you, Andy, for leading into the next question. So everybody that's driven down the road notices that there's looking to hire signs everywhere, places offering increased wages that historically would have low wages, sign-on bonuses. There's clearly a shortage of willing workers. And so one, are you facing those same challenges? And two, what unique ways are you addressing both being able to bring in talent, but then also retaining the talent that's currently in place? Yep, let's just start with Frank.
Okay. Interestingly enough, in the construction world, I am not seeing a significant shortage in staffing. It's interesting. I was talking to a sub yesterday. I said, what's your world like? He said, well, I had 12 projects, 6 of them got put on hold, and I'm glad they got put on hold because now I got enough people to finish the work I have. So, and I mean, we're not road builders and facing those huge demand type projects. The schools are probably stressed on the labor side. They have this short window that they have to get all their construction done in. But in terms of staffing in the construction side, mid-range construction, we haven't seen a significant problem.
He's the expert, but we're not facing with our projects either. We have big firms like Frank's who are handling our projects, so we're not finding that as much as well. But definitely in the retail and the restaurant space, for which we have many, that is a serious challenge. Restaurateurs especially, who need a lot of staffing, have been challenged with how do you keep the doors open? We've had delayed openings because you can't find help. We've had retailers, restaurants who actually have had to close their doors because their staff has turned over and they haven't been able to resupply that back. So there are definitely challenges with everybody who's serving us. And now that it's summertime, I know it's been a little cooler the last couple of days, but now that it's summertime, everybody is out and about. In conjunction with the lifting of a lot of the restrictions, everybody wants to be somewhere. So it has been very challenging how to service everybody. If you go to a restaurant, you often find that service is slow because there's not enough staff to service everybody. I've talked to a bunch of our restaurateurs. Now that social distancing may be relaxed, are you going to add back tables? Probably not so quickly because then you have to staff it. So it's been an interesting, challenging time. Many of the restaurateurs are providing bonuses and offering the people who work for them, if you have a friend, you $500, extra. So it is challenging. I know that we need to kind of get through this summer so that once some of the federal subsidies that are being given out are relaxed, that may help things. The good news is there's a tremendous amount of business and we're all pent up. So it's not that we're in a place where we don't need people. It's great news that we actually need people. And I think that this is a course correction and it won't be long term.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you on the short-term nature of it. As a company, we've really not seen any issue with people leaving, and I should be cautious in saying that because there's some Farbman people here today going, well, maybe I should test the market now that he said that. But the reality is we tried to build a culture throughout our history that entices people to stay and make it a good environment for people. So our turnover has been, really there hasn't been any. We've put in place a lot of the hiring plans that have been talked about. We pay a signing bonus right now. We pay a bonus if you stay through your first year. We pay referral fees to employees and the group of contractors and partners if they bring in someone that comes to work for us. So that's really helped us a lot with our hiring. We also go through a variety of search firms and try to create and maintain a diverse workforce through that. As far as some of the challenges with our vending environment with our subcontractors, we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg on that with really recently delays in some of the products and materials that need to come to the sites. We do more tenant fit out work than we do ground up construction, so we're seeing a little bit of a challenge starting with that with short delays in delivery. But what we found is, if previously you were calling 3 subcontractors to bid on every deal, you're calling 35 now to get the parts and pieces that you need for it. So I think we're just seeing the jumping off point for that. But, we're also roll up your sleeves type of an organization, and we dive in and find solutions.
One follow-up to that. I think what I've seen in the past, and I think could happen again here, is this lag effect. I remember talking to Matt Rossetti, and he said, it takes 3 to 5 years when you hire an architect to get that guy to where you can kind of put something in front of him and he's productive. And when you stop hiring, now you're losing that experience mod for those 3 to 5 year guys. So we may see this lag effect on labor and in your business too.
Yep,
You've
absolutely.
got to have those young people coming into the business and learning. And I think the big challenge, even if they are being hired, they're not face-to-face with their mentors. And I think in some businesses, that's the biggest downside to the labor that I've seen. You're just not face-to-face with your mentors. And you got to be face-to-face. You got to see Gordy Fulmer smiling at you, reminding you to have a business card wherever you go. One of his pet peeves. Don't go anywhere without a business card.
So one of the things that Ivy touched on, and a lot of my clients really have that September 6th date marked on the calendar for when that extra unemployment expires. My follow-up question to that would be, one, do you expect there's going to be a large influx of potential employees once that expires? And 2, some of these increased incentives that you've seen, increased wages, sign-on bonuses, retention bonuses, is that all here to stay? Or, once we get past this, our place is going to scale back their salaries for new hires and some of those extra incentives that they put in place?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
I think that a lot of what we're doing for sign-on bonuses and salaries are probably here to stay. Do I think when the subsidies end, will that increase the people coming back into the workforce? I do. But I also believe that a lot of people have figured out how not to come to work. And it's been a nice thing. There's more balance. Will that sustain for the next year or 2? I'm not sure. But I do not think that everybody is going to come back to the workforce. There won't be pent-up. People will have figured some things out. So I don't think we're going to hit a place where all of a sudden you're going to have this amazing flood and that we as employers can cut everybody's salaries in half. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think some of that is here to stay. I think it's tough competing with the government right now for staffing, and that's been a challenge for all of us. But I do think once the benefits run out, people will have to at least make an effort to look for work, and so we'll see many people coming back to the workforce. And I do think there'll be that balance of how many days they come into work and how many days they work from home. And I think you need a little bit of both, and I think that's okay. Being a company that buys a lot of office buildings, I think you'll see, though, the workforce return because, as Frank alluded to, in order to create a culture, in order to have mentors working with you, or simply to have a company that's functional and understands its goals, and you need to be face-to-face at least more often than not. And so we actually, our workforce returned to a great extent in our offices recently, in our headquarters, and the energy was just amazing. People were excited to be back in the office again, which I never thought I'd see. People like excited to stop into their workplace, but it's great to see. I think they missed that face-to-face communication and the camaraderie that's built from working together in close quarters.
I think the other thing we're going to see, that the people that are coming back to work are going to need to be paid more because everything they buy is costing more, right? So inflation is here to stay, or not to stay. It's really here now. There's no doubt about that. So when these people get hired, they got to possibly pay more for fuel. Everything in their life is going to cost them more. So that wage is not going to come down.
So you're doing a great job of continually leading into what the next question is. So Frank, this one's going to be, definitely in your wheelhouse. But have you seen a significant rise in costs in your business? I think everybody's familiar with the lumber shortage and seeing those materials, but is it across the board? Are you seeing significant increases? And then also, what are you doing to address those additional costs?
So undoubtedly, across the board, every type of project we have has seen increase in cost. Most increases are in commodities, but even the commodities are hard to explain, but that maybe is a more global issue, copper and metals and the type of things that the components of the business, PVC, acrylics for paint are short. So we've seen it in every sector. What we're doing to try to mitigate it is, try to be as efficient as we can in assembling our bids, trying to find alternatives. If lumber is going up, can we do something in steel to mitigate some of that increased cost? So we're constantly looking at opportunities, but I mean, you got to use concrete, you got to use wire. There's things you just have no substitute for, so you can't really change a lot of what we do. Our industry has components that are just necessary to build. So, we get a client that's saying, okay, I can. This job is $500,000 more than we thought it was a year ago. I can handle that. But the trap is the interest rates, because they perform it at an aggressive rate, and then 2 years from now we get it done, and all of a sudden the rate's eating up what little profit they had left to do the job to start with. So that's one of my fears, is the interest rate trap.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that unless you were, I don't want to, okay. We're just starting to see those costs rise in our construction. Contractors have held the contracts that were in place where they were and have been really good about that. But we are starting to see that rise, and we are looking at alternative options for things. We recently were building out an overnight stay medical building. And as we got to the end of it, the lights that were supposed to be delivered, which were these anti-ligature lights, suddenly weren't available anywhere in the U.S. And so we went and begged and borrowed from all of our friends. We called every healthcare organization, borrowed some until we get our supply in, and bought what we needed to. But you have to get crafty, and you really have to. And there's some things you just can't avoid in terms of price increases. Right now, they're going to happen. But many times it's about just rolling up your sleeves and finding alternatives. And that's held well for us so far, but I don't know how long that will hold.
So I'm going to add to the supply chain discussion, because construction we already know, but who's tried to buy a piece of furniture recently and have it delivered in a timely way, right? It's impossible. The retailer tells you 2 weeks, and 2 months, 6 months. I know people have been waiting close to 10 months to get something in. So if you extrapolate furniture amongst all other product types, what's happening with the retailers who are selling all of these? What's happening to all of these costs? Supply chain has been disrupted everywhere. And so Frank was talking about lag time. This is absolutely lag time. How long will this last? Of course, it will correct itself at some point, but all of this is going to add to our costs, which is why we're seeing inflation at this point. It's going to be all across the board. everything's going to rise.
So two of the biggest things that happened during the pandemic were working from home and buying everything online. And so this will be a great question for you, Ivy. What is your outlook on the industry as it relates to both office space and retail space, given what took place in the last year and a half?
Well, I'll start with retail. Retail has been a very interesting story. We all expected retail to go away, and it didn't. Absolutely, online shopping has increased a millionfold. People now know how to do that. There was a lot of the population that was insecure about going online, much easier to go shopping, and most of us all know how to go online now because it was the only way that we were going to get goods in the last year and a half. Retailers and bricks and mortar, for a large part, stayed strong. The amount of occupancy that's been retained in this country for retail is pretty stunning. It doesn't mean that there aren't small retailers, especially, who have been hurt and have not been able to survive, but I personally expected a lot more of that to tank, and it did not. Retail, the amount of new retail businesses that continue to happen through the pandemic as people continue to explore what to do, and it's on fire. Again, not just here, but all across the country. We have all kinds of new concepts that are looking at what we're doing, not only here in Detroit, but also in Cleveland. So that's very good news. I think office is a slower story because even though there are still businesses and offices that are looking to grow, many of us, we talked about the fact that we're not going to come back to the office. Many of us are not going to come back to the office 5 days a week. We don't need as much space. So there's some attrition in the office space as people say, maybe I don't need 100,000 square feet, maybe it's only 75. Maybe I really don't need an office. I find that less people don't really need an office because we've all now gotten to a place where we see the benefit of coming back and being with people, whether it's mentoring, hanging with our compatriots, and making sure that we're creating and furthering our culture. A lot of us like to get out of the house for at least a little bit now. So office isn't going away, and we don't find many companies that are actually giving up office space entirely. But there is downsizing. The good news is there are businesses that are growing. They're still looking at other markets, and that has actually ratcheted up recently.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you with office. One of the things we've seen in the last 3 to 4 months, we've seen kind of an explosion of companies that are getting back to work, but more than that, taking the time to update their leases that they've been kind of kicking down the road for the last year plus. So the demand in office for us has been incredible. We are busy every day, either amending leases or bringing in new ones, and it has been a mixed bag. We've seen companies that are continuing to grow, and it's great. We cheer them when they've got more space. It's very exciting. But we've also seen a little bit of downsizing, and many companies still holding their position. The one caveat I would say to that I think we still need to talk about is that the idea of benching or very close quarters in an office is still an uncertainty with people. They want that divider between them. Anyone who's put their office together with benching, where you're basically sitting in the lap of the person that sits next to you, the minute that person sneezes in one direction or the other, people are going to ask for a little more space and a little more protection. And so I think you'll see some of that where employers are going to be asked to spread the employees out if you want them back in the office so that they don't get that, or at least put up some plexiglass sneeze guards between them, where I think that will help with some of the, with maintaining some of the space that people are in already. But right now, I think the next 12 to 18 months will be very telling for the direction office goes.
On the office side, Nicole Franzen educated me on the third place. So there's home, there's work, and the third place. And the third place is this neutral ground that people can escape to flip open their laptop, have a private meeting, those types of things. So we're looking at some of our buildings of adding a third place component to the building, so they don't have to necessarily leave the structure and use it as an amenity to attract people to the building. On the retail side, I agree with you. The thing that we're into more small shop retail, and almost 70 to 80% of those tenants are restaurants, food service of some sort. So I think that's people like being able to go out to eat. They like being able to drive by and pick up what they want instead of having the Uber driver eating his French fries on the way to delivery. That happens. I just check your French fries. Do a count on them. Make sure you got all the French fries you ordered.
So then switching gears, what is your outlook on the industrial space, and then also in the urban districts, and what you see moving forward in those areas?
So industrial continues to be pretty robust as everybody figures out where to put that industrial space, since the last mile has become so important. I think that industrial was on fire for quite a long time, and I still think it's in fire in many places. But again, there's probably a bit of a shift based upon where the last mile is. That's become incredibly important. You have grocery stores that are exploring whether or not some of their locations should now be for distribution as opposed to be, servicing outward, how they get that in the back of their stores. And so whether or not you're doing, industrial parks, industrial buildings, or industrial is now taking some of what needs to be repurposed in other asset classes, I think there's a shift, somewhat of a shift in that industry too. But it's very, very strong because of what's gone on with online and how that has exponentially grown unexpectedly. They expected a slower pace, but this year really put it into a whole different stratosphere.
Yeah, one of the things that we're starting to see is spec building of industrial, and it's nice to see. It's one of the few categories where you really do see that nowadays. I think the cost of construction may put a damper on that, but I tend to agree industrial is going to be robust. Over the next 12 months, it's incredibly well occupied, and there's a great demand for it. As far as urban centers, you asked about that. I still think there's a great need for that, and I probably should defer to you on that, Ivy, since you have most of Detroit. But we're still very active in it. We believe that the city has a really good opportunity to become one of the mainstays of the Midwest. As we see cities like Chicago sputter a little bit, not being able to overcome things that we were able to overcome through bankruptcy and other opportunities. And really, as you travel throughout the Midwest, you see that, years ago it was you go to some location and tell them you're from Detroit, and they'd pat you down. And nowadays, when I tell people I'm from Detroit, they're like, oh, that's such a cool city. It's so amazing. And I think we've seen a lot of shift to people wanting to come here. I think that will continue to be strong. I'm very bullish on the city of Detroit, and I love seeing it thrive. It's exciting for a lifelong Michigander.
So I'm going to add before I defer to Frank, because I'm a newbie. While I have been back and forth to Detroit for probably 25 or 30 years, I actually just moved here in November. And I moved here because I believe in Detroit, I believe in the mission, and it's amazing what's happened over the last 10 years since it was not this way when I first started coming here. And I agree. The amount of things going on in this city, people think of this city differently than what we've seen from Chicago. I'm recently transplanted from Chicago. So Chicago, San Francisco, LA, New York, those are different stories. People have a tremendous amount of pride in Detroit. People have been pent up to come and stay downtown. It's not the same amount of fear or flight that we've seen here that we have in other cities. So I agree. It's a really good story as we continue to grow.
On the industrial side, I agree with Andy. The demand is solid. We manage 800,000 square feet down by the airport. and have been able to maintain strong occupancy, but have a 5-acre parcel. We ran some numbers to spec it, and the investor said, no, the returns are not adequate. So that's going to be the next step is will rents follow the cost? And are you seeing rents for new construction meeting the market? I mean,
I think they were up until the point that we're at right now, where you have the disruption in the supply chain, you have materials that you can't get quickly enough, and I think that's going to change it. But I think we have the ability to raise rents in order to do that. No one likes to hear that, by the way, but in industrial, that I think we're there, and the need is there to allow for it.
I mean, because of Amazon, you can't buy bar joists from any supplier for months. Their buildings have dominated and controlled all the bar joist production in the country. So it's not just price, it's the availability of product.
Absolutely.
You're going to spec a building too.
So have we seen increases in foot traffic, and what would you think of the outlook on what I would refer to as social districts, where people can park their car and hit up a number of stores, get something to eat, and areas like Detroit, Birmingham, Mount Clemens, where you've seen some of this development? Is there going to be a lot more investment in those type of communities moving forward?
I think that's some of what we've just been talking about. I do think so. I think that for Detroit in particular, one of the nice things with offices who are only going to have people come back 3 or 4 days a week is that's alleviated some of the garage space. I think that there was a real pent-up parking issues pre-pandemic, and so it's going to make it easier for people to come downtown and park and go inside. I think we will all continue to keep the city active and programming, and we just did Monroe Midway, and there will continue to be this, the city who has the beach in Campus Martius and all of those things. So, and I think all municipalities are doing those things, and those continue to thrive because generally speaking, we are social creatures and we like having activity. So I think that it's only going to continue on being strong.
Yeah, I think so too. Although having just had the last bit of rules and regulations lifted yesterday, it's tough to tell yet, but I really believe people want to be together, and there's going to be a big demand for walking districts and being able to have experiential opportunities.
Yeah, if it's helpful, like our first week when we opened Monroe Midway, we had almost 2,000 people in the first week.
That's awesome.
And that was before the restrictions are lifted. Socially distanced at how we are programming that. But it's clear that people want to be downtown, they want to be out and about. We actually kept the city fairly active through Christmas. Normally things get quieter at that point, but we had the drive-in. And we had a ton of activity. We had a drive-in that was full probably most of the time. And so I do think that will keep going. I think it was the Detroit News that said foot traffic's already increased by like 176% downtown.
Right. You need headcount, whether it's in the commercial building or the residence. In Chicago, in a 1 mile radius, you have 300,000 people. Here, I mean, you're lucky to have 25,000, except for maybe where you guys are downtown. We're in Midtown across the street from the Pistons and Henry Ford, and they definitely have numbers, but it's still nowhere near the density that generates foot traffic. So I think it's nice. It'd be nice to have it, but the reality is every area of town is not going to enjoy traffic. You've got to have numbers. That's what makes it work.
So at this time we have about 10 minutes left, and we'd like to open it up for any Q&A with our panelists. So if anybody has any questions.
What are your thoughts about the suburban office space? You talked mostly about urban, but what are your thoughts there?
So the question is what are your thoughts on suburban office space? Obviously, we've been talking a lot about the urban areas.
Yeah, I'd love to speak about that a little bit. You know, for us, while we do both urban and suburban offices, we made a switch a few years ago to a focus more on suburban at a time when I think that was coming back around in many major, municipalities. We're very bullish on that. I think one of the things that we found is people want that urban office, but there's times if you live in the suburbs that when it snows out, which, thanks to global warming, barely happens anymore. But when it does, you might want a suburban office, a small space or larger to drop into. And so we've been very bullish on that because we've seen that thought process. And we're seeing that now as people come back. They're like, we love our office downtown. Our staff isn't ready to go back to that yet. And so they're occupying suburban spaces, at least for the near future.
Yeah, I guess I would just add to that I think the pandemic actually helped the suburban market.
It did.
Because people were shifting what their priorities are to what you've just said. So I think that's actually helped to lift it.
Yeah, I think the value is in the suburban market. When you're here downtown, you've got parking expense, you've got significant additional costs, city income tax. So when somebody makes that decision to come to the city, they are overcoming some financial challenges to do it because they can get similar space at a better value, definitely in one of Andy's buildings.
Hopefully.
So he's a great landlord.
Oh, thank you.
Question?
Not even paid for.
In the second row.
I think that those, they really kind of hit the skids right during the pandemic because, I know we personally in my last life, we had just gotten some co-working space in downtown Chicago because we were a suburban office user. And, within 30 days we pulled the plug, right? But I believe that going forward, there is so much pent-up entrepreneurial spirit still. That I think you'll still see that being utilized. I think it will start serving a purpose again, so to speak. So I think that they'll continue to do well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one of the things that we've also seen is some of the smaller co-working spaces, kind of a gathering or a community like Bamboo. I think have kind of figured it out. People feel good about coming to it. They know everyone that's there. It's smaller and not, as corporate. And so we've seen that somewhat stabilize during that and a growth pattern coming from it. And that I think there'll always be some need for both direct office space and that co-working space. But it definitely took a hard hit.
I believe we had a question in the front.
Yes. I think we're well positioned. So Hudson's is a combination, right? It's not purely office, it's office, hotel, and residences. So it's a very nice mix. Book Tower is largely residential. There's actually not that, with some retail, there's actually not much office within there too. And I think that there will be some demand when we get to the end of December. We are finding all of our residences are filling back up downtown. And then we have Monroe Block, which we are also working on design for, that will be a healthy balance of all the product types with a lot of retail. We have some exciting things that we're working on So I think it'll fit nicely into the city. I think the fact that we kept going so that, you know, Hudson's, I think, is 24 before it's opened, right? It takes a long time to build these projects. Book Tower, again, is open at the end of next year, and Monroe will be after that. It's a nice pace as we continue to grow the city, and that because we didn't pause, there won't be like a 5-year lag. You know, it didn't set us back because we did keep going. So I think that those are going to be positively impacted and provide continued growth stories for the city.
All right, if there are no other questions, that concludes our panel.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
What about the Pistons?
yeah,
Let's hear
number
it.
one pick.
Number one grant choice.
It's a great day to be a Detroit Pistons fan.
Yes, it is.
All right, so now that we gave that a round of applause, let's give our panel a round of applause as well. And now I'd like to call Jason Hosko back to the stage as he's going to have some giveaways to announce.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, panel. Very great discussion. On the Pistons, I have a colleague whose fiance works for the Pistons who was supposed to be here this morning, but apparently they were up celebrating late into the hours last night. So, I guess housekeeping duties and some door prizes to give away. If you happen to drop your card into the bowl there at the front, you may have noticed some prizes from our sponsors. Let me find those here. So we have Breeden raffled off Michigan Summertime Bag. Dickinson Wright is giving away a coffee basket. And UHY donated 2 Tiger tickets. Those tickets are right behind the dugout, I understand. So I have the 3 winners here. Just head up to the desk after this to collect your prize. So I have Spencer Symington from AVI. I have Kevin Gross from Marks Moda, and Christina Winkler Meredith from Wayne State. So head back, collect your prize, and thank you again to all of our sponsors, our panel. Hope to see all of you here for our next breakfast series, which is Powered by Women, August 25th. Get your tickets early, it'll sell out, and you have a great rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was